Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dice Matter, your new favorite D&D podcast. I'm one-third of your host, your friendly neighborhood dice dealer, Jacob Van Amburg.
I'm your wheeling dealing dice dealer, Abram Klaassen.
And I'm the rough, rigid dice rolling host, Dillon.
Today we have quite the episode for you. We're going to talk about why dice matter.
Hey, look at that.
What a great way to start off the episode. We already got the title drop.
That's it, we can go home, guys.
Alright, cool, yeah, that's the end of the podcast. Anyway, I don't know, I think the first thing I would like to bring up is how dice differ. And how it's kind of different than everything else. Because when you think of a conventional dice, you kind of think of Monopoly or other things of your six-sided die, with the dots on it.
Yes, and D&D has crazy die. I mean, to a normal person, a D20 is the most bonker thing they could possibly be given. I mean, you sit down at the table.
Ludicrous.
It's ludicrous. You sit down at the table and you're presented with this die with 20 sides, and you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles, I think, to get over when you first kind of join, is that there are 7 different types of die, 2 of which are kind of the same with the D10 and the D100. Which, does anybody want to explain what the D and the number afterward means?
That means how many sides are on the dice.
Yes, yeah. D sides, D stands for dice, and then the number follows with how many sides there are.
So, yeah, and so it's just kind of like, I think one of the craziest things, though, is, like, getting plopped in front of these just, like, grotesque looking dice. I'm not even gonna lie, the first time I saw them, they just look abnormal, and you don't know how the heck to even, like, make do with it. Like, a D4 to me just looks absolutely nuts. So, I think when it comes to it, and then you read everything, it's like, roll a D4, roll a D12, and you're like,
It is hard, and like you said, it's probably one of the biggest hurdles. I'm sure Abram would agree that when you see the dice, it's you getting used to what dice to roll when is probably the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I initially started, I had a little bit of familiarity with the system. Like, I had seen some, like, high rollers, and I think briefly I played, like, a session at one point, but never got anywhere from it. So I wasn't super, like, I wasn't getting dropped into the deep end when I started, but it was a little bit of a, okay, I'm rolling this one for this. But really, once it's a matter of, my problem was just getting familiar with the dice, and it was usually like, okay, the one little pentagon is the D12. I'm not going to use that very often, but
Yes.
The big question is first, like, figuring out, as you say, figuring out when to roll each dice.
Yeah, and and I think that's mainly it. When I started playing, I had this immediate gravitation towards the D20. It is a very cool looking die, and it's exactly as you say. You learn, like, you have your D8, but you don't use your D8 much. You only use it for damage. So you're maybe rolling that once out of the 100 times you're going to roll your D20.
Yeah, there's a reason why a lot of, like, you watch all the things that have Dungeons and Dragons paraphernalia on it. A lot of times it has, like, a D20 on it, and that's just because, like, when you think of the game, you think of the D20. Everything you do is a D20. The way you run with the D20, you jump with the D20, you solve crimes with the D20. Like, it doesn't matter.
Even us. We support the D20. When you see the Dice Matter Instagram account or Twitter account, you will see a D20.
Exactly. So, because
we'll talk about that more during the break between conversation. I'll be talking about social media and our sponsors.
Yeah.
We don't have any sponsors, but if we do,
I think I would like to move into the topic of dice superstition.
Yeah.
Now, are you,
Yes.
Dillon and Abram, are you guys big culprits of believing in dice superstition? What's your guys' takes on that?
Abram, you go first.
I'm really bad about the whole, like, this D20 keeps rolling low, so I'm gonna use a different one. I'm really bad about that. Or like, oh man, this shiny red one I keep rolling natural 20s on. I'm gonna keep using it until this is my go-to dice. Actually, my usual go-to is the shiny gold one, but I don't feel right unless I'm using that one.
Yeah, I get you. I think for me, like, I'm a very not superstitious person. Like, I'm usually pretty, like, not against it, but I just don't, like, go for it. But when it comes to D20s, I would definitely have to say, like, there's, like, a part of me that's, like, I'm not going to use you again. Like, there'll be many times, like, say it's, like, a DM.
You crossed me.
I think the worst thing is, like, you keep rolling D20s or D1s. Nat 1s, Nat 20s. Because, and like, it sucks because eventually people kind of like, they're like,
use a different die.
Yeah, they're like, use a different die, or they think you're fudging the die, so you're like, I'm not going to use this one anymore.
To me, I feel like dice superstition is one of the best parts of D&D, in my opinion. I love the idea of you getting personally connected to a dice that has pink speckles just because it rolls you 20 nat 20s, you know? Like, I love the idea of you putting one dice over the other, even though they're technically the same thing, just because that one sometimes rolls better than the other one.
And I think one thing for me is, I think one important thing is buying your first set or receiving your first set.
Oh, extremely.
I remember buying my first set and just, like, I was enamored with it. It was like this, like, sparkly purple set that I just loved. I mean, eventually I gave it away because I realized I didn't have that much personal attachment to it anymore, but just getting those first pair and knowing that it's yours. And that's why usually as a DM, when I do DM, I usually give out dice to new players because I know how much that can mean to them.
That was a really important moment for me, starting to get that, like...
I remember that. I remember reaching into my dice bag and being like, Bram, welcome to the party. Here's your first set of dice.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think 2 weeks later, I bought my first set, and that was really important for me to get, like, a personal investment into it.
And then, I would agree with that. It's a personal investment.
Yeah.
I think it's stepping past the boundary. You finally, you buy your dice, and you are a D&D player the second you buy your first set of dice.
Exactly. And I think a big step for me is, even though I know, like, half of the people that I play with, or we play with, they don't even have a player's handbook. But I think another big step is buying your own player handbook, having it on your own. I mean, for me personally, I have bought every single book that's come out. So, like, to me, it's not that big of a deal. But to some people, like, receiving that book is a lot. Like,
oh yeah, and even like opening some of those books for the first time, I remember, like, I think you were. Like, I was looking through that was my phone going off. Sorry about that.
Speaking of which, I'm going to put mine on silent.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Edit this out.
Cut here.
Podcast brain. There are no mistakes.
I think what you were trying to get at, Dylan, is even when you played with us supplying you with the player's handbook, when you receive one, not so much buy one, but when you first kind of go to a table and they present you with this book, it's a little bit overwhelming. You have a book that's like, I want to say over 300 pages of rules, of customization, of everything. D&D, if you put it in a video game sense, creating your characters, it takes you more than an hour. It's the longest part of playing D&D.
Exactly. Well, and, like, I think another major thing is, like, I knew kind of from the start that, like, this was going to be a big part, in the sense of, I remember being very, very confused when I first started. I remember, like, we started on 3.5 in a Star Wars campaign, and I played someone called Doug Duggerson, and you know,
a good character.
He was, and somehow he was the only one that lived, and he was stupid as shit. But, like, with that being said, like, that experience I had learning that, and then going to 5e, learning that there's other ways to play this game, and learning just how different the dice mattered each generation of D&D, really. Because, like, I think to different generations, the dice mean differently. You know, I think a lot of time in 5e, there's a lot of things that you don't roll for.
Yeah.
You just say that you do. Or you have to kind of guess what to roll with. While with 3.5, there's a lot of exactly what to do. Like, it says this is how much you can jump. This is your swimming. This is that.
I agree. You know, as much as we're talking about dice, regarding dice and how much you use the D20, Bram, I know you're a personal fan of kind of dice that don't really get to see the limelight, like D12s and D4s.
Yes. I think. Well, I mean, the D4 I think is. Well, I like the D4 because it gives you a lot of. There are a lot of things that use it, and I mean, it is the weakest die because of the fact that it doesn't go as high. But I love the things that it's attached to, like. Vicious Mockery is one of my favorite cantrips. It's not a very useful cantrip.
I think
but
it is.
The fact that you can say, I bully this man to death.
Yeah.
I bully this man until he dies. And, well, and...
Bully the dragon to death.
Yeah.
You're big and red. Stop.
Stop it.
Stop.
You don't see a lot of different shaped die though. Like, yes, the D4 is attached to a lot of things, but as far as using it, you rarely get to, and that's something that I find myself wanting more of. I would love, one of my favorite dies is the D8. I love the shape of it. It just looks cool. It's just all the dice from D8s always look so cool. It's the easiest die to make appealable, and you don't use it.
There's a lot of things that the D8 just gets used for. Is like, if you're going to be the classic shining knight wielding a sword, that's a D8, my guy. That D8, that long sword you're wielding. Just the D8 has so much versatility and use.
It's like attached to a lot of things, but you don't use it for a lot of things. You only use it mainly for damage rolls.
Exactly. Yeah.
I would love to roll with it more in the actual game.
Now, I would like to talk about, what are you guys' thoughts on DMs fudging dice rolls?
I 100% think a DM at certain times should fudge a dice roll.
I agree. What do you think, Brim?
Now, I've rarely fudge a dice roll. I think it's really important that. Well, I will usually fudge a dice roll if I'm playing with a person who has never played before.
Yes.
Or someone who is not very good at the game. I'll only fudge a dice roll if I really think that. I don't really fudge dice rolls very often. What I fudge the most is like hit points or armor class more than anything else. Of like, I want this character to have a really important moment slaying this creature. So I'm just gonna fudge the hit points. But I do fudge dice rolls occasionally of like, I don't want this to kill this person.
Yeah.
A level 1 wizard can get hit by anything and pretty much get knocked down instantly.
A D4 could kill. I think it, when it comes to fudging dice, there's two major things that I'll fudge a dice on. One thing, it's like new players, someone that like you don't want them to die. Or and this is kind of a bad thing to do, is if that character is just pissing me off. I'm not gonna lie. If that character is pissing me off, then one time, if they like do something that I know they're like metagaming or I know they're breaking the rules,
you're gonna fudge a dice roll.
I'm gonna fudge a dice roll.
See, for me, I say, here's my take on fudging dice rolls. If it's a new player, I try to play by the rules, but obviously, if you really want them to get into D&D, you need to give them a good experience to start. Now, going along with that, here's my thoughts. I will only fudge dice rolls if it's for character-based reasons. If a rogue is a rogue, and his whole character is built on being this charming, persuasive, dashing man, and he keeps rolling shitty-ass rolls to try to pass his way with his charms, sometimes I will grant him the benefit of fudging a roll, so that way he gets that feeling that he is actually useful in a party.
Exactly, and the reason why I fudge rolls on people that's like not necessarily paying attention or metagaming is I do it enough to where I won't kill the person, but enough to get them to like be like jog them back into the campaign. Be like, your character is gonna die. If you don't pay attention, he's going to die.
If you're gonna keep metagaming, he's going to die.
You know, or there's like, if you're not paying attention at all, well, all of a sudden this monster's gonna do a lot more damage. That way, it's not like he keeps chipping at damage. You could just not pay attention.
It just jump starts.
Yeah, and so and if again I don't see it after that, well, I mean, I'm not gonna fudge it anymore because literally that's not gonna do anything. But I think just letting characters have their cool moments, I think, is a big thing.
And that's exactly it. I mean, sometimes it doesn't really matter, even if their role was to pass. Say, for example, you're getting away from the monsters, and some character wants to jump out of the boat and help push it, because his character is based on strength, and that's all he's really good at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll fudge a dice roll. I'll let him do that, because it doesn't really change the narrative of the game, but it makes him feel like he was useful to the party and was there when the party needed him the most in his style of gameplay.
But you can't always have that happen, because if a character succeeds every single time, you know.
And that's exactly what I mean by
it's all about balance.
It's definitely a balance.
There is a narrative element of how important failure is. I think it's important to, if your character does nothing but win, where's the fun? Where's the challenge?
Mm-hmm.
If your character if your character is going to fail regularly, then there's no fun. So it's important to have that balance so that when your character succeeds, it feels like a really big moment of like, wow, it was so close between failure or this. But your player shouldn't always succeed either, because then they feel that failure is so much harder. And I think failure is hilarious from a narrative perspective, you know?
I think that you're right, Bram, but I think that it's a double-sided coin. Here's what I think. It matters the campaign. In Tomb, for example, Tomb's a very hard campaign. Failure is important. You are constantly, in my opinion, trying to push the players down to suppress that fear that they might not be able to kill a Sarek. So it's important that they fail. But if it's a campaign like Rise of Tiamat, to where you don't need to constantly oppress the characters, I think it is okay to sometimes fudge a roll just to make a character, and not all the time. I'm talking once in a blue moon. To make a character or the party in general have a pretty cool moment where they constantly cling on to it and they go, hey, remember when this happened?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's a good example. It's like, you know, when I did Tyranny of the Dragon, I saw it as an epic story. And so I didn't make it that challenging. I wanted to be like characters could live and they get to tell their story. But now I'm DMing Mad Mage, and granted, Jacob and a bunch of other people kept rolling nat ones like every 2 goddamn seconds. And I would roll nat ones every like 3 seconds. But, you know, and I think in that campaign, there's a lot of this dungeon, this mega dungeon being really hard. There's not a lot of people that get out of it. So when people fail, like, I like to make it that they fail in the Mad Mage, because I want to make it that it is a challenge to get to the bottom.
Now, as far as you were saying, though, Bram, I do agree with you, and I do like the saying of your character is only as strong as the way he handles his failures. I do like that, and I think it's very important to a character to fail to become a good character.
And, you know, of course, I'm not gonna use player names at all, but, you know, there's definitely people that, like, they hate failing. Like, every time I DM, I see this person, they will fail and lose their shit. Like, they'll just break down. They will just get so disinterested because they're all about getting high numbers. They're all about being the most powerful person. They're all about my character needs to stay in the background but be important, kind of thing.
I definitely agree. You know, you can empower a player, but you got to be careful to make sure that the character is not too powerful and the player doesn't get too egotistical. Now, going from fudging dice, I want to ask you guys, what's your opinions on rolling dice by hand versus dice towers. For those of you who don't know, in the Dungeons and Dragons community, there is a thing called a dice tower. It's this big, cool-looking thing that if you put your dice at the top, it'll roll in the tower, and the tower will roll your dice for you, and it'll pop it out at the bottom with a random number on it. You can either do that, or, like the classic game of Yahtzee, you can use a cup and roll it, or you can just put it in your hand like Monopoly and roll it onto the table.
Or onto the table into like a dice rolling.
There is dice mats. They'll make sure that your dice doesn't fall off the table or whatever. But generally speaking, those are the main 3 ways you can roll dice.
Mm-hmm.
I myself am not particularly a big fan of dice towers, if I'm being honest.
I would agree with that.
I
yes.
agree as well.
Now, cup rolling, I feel like sometimes I like it, but other times I don't like it. That one I don't really have any strong opinions on.
When it comes to cup rolling, I think it's cool.
I do like the sound it makes.
Yeah, but it's like it's a novelty thing.
It is. It very much is.
But it's the same issue you get with dice towers. It just takes too much time, and when you're like in combat per se, combat can be the most. It could either go really fast or really short, depending on how people roll their dice, or how people quickly, think on the spot and everything. And it really sucks when it drags, because somebody's sitting there, they're rolling their dice, and they're adding up everything. And for new players, it's understandable, but for when it comes to like veteran players, it can get kind of annoying when I'm sitting there and I'm like, you should know what you have to roll. And when you have a dice tower added onto that, you have to wait for it to fall down.
I mean, the first time you use a dice tower, it's pretty fucking dope, to be honest. It's super cool. I mean, one of the players we play with, Maxwell, he has this super cool dice tower that looks like a castle. And when you put it in the top and it rolls, it's cool. It's really cool. But yes, I do agree that eventually there's a difference between practicality and something looking cool.
Abram, what are your
now,
thoughts?
In some degrees, I think that a dice box or a dice tower combines the best aspects of practicality and aesthetic purposes, because like, I do like when my dice don't fall on the floor, because then I have to pick it up, and that requires crawling under the table or whatever. I think it's, and at the same time, it can look really pretty, and there are a lot of people who make their livelihoods building these dice boxes and dice towers. My problem with the dice tower is that sometimes it can become a little too much of a distraction per se. Like, I really just prefer, more than anything else, just rolling it on the table so that it's there for everyone to see, so people don't know that I'm fudging a dice roll as a player. But as a DM, I'm usually using a dice box.
Yeah.
I do think So, I do agree with you that the dice tower can be distracting. I think the only time a dice tower is okay is to add that element of drama.
Ooh,
Say,
yes.
for example, Dillon rolls, he ends up hitting my level 1 wizard. He has to. My wizard has 6 hit points, and it turns out he has to roll a d4 plus 2. If he was to roll that through the dice tower, so the whole table watches as he drops it into the dice tower, and it pops out maybe a 4 or a 2 or whatever it pops out, it's fun. It adds that element of surprise. But that can be oversaturated. So there's that nice balance you need between a dice tower and, like Bram said, a dice mat. There's practicality versus oversaturation.
Now, I haven't personally really played with dice mats, but I've always wanted to, just because, at least as a player or as a DM giving to a player, because when I sit back there as a DM, when I roll, it's small, it's just right there. I usually don't drop anything on the floor. But as a player, they can go everywhere. If you have that one small confined space, because that also brings up another issue that always seems to come up, is my die is on a crease.
Oh, God.
And I swear to God, if one more person comes up to me and says I should have gone in nat 20 because I was on a crease.
Can I re-roll it fell on a crease?
And it's become kind of a meme in between the group, because no, it got to a point to where like legitimately people would be, it would be on a crease or something like that, and they'd be
It's like every roll rolled out to a crease.
and it was like, well, it's either a 2 or a nat 20. I'm like, dude, shut up, just re-roll. Like,
And I do agree, that's a problem. Creases suck. It pains me when I hear the words, "Can I re-roll this? It landed on a crease."
yeah,
My body aches.
yeah.
It hurts.
No, it does. It actually does. It physically and mentally makes me sick. But I think,
It makes my entire body reject the moment someone says those words.
dude, honestly, they'll say, "Oh, it fell on a crease," and like right then and there, I need to go take a break. Like I need to leave my house for like a couple minutes. But I don't know. I think one thing is when it comes to a dice mat, I think even then though, like it can land on a corner of a dice mat and like it would be on the flip side and they'll still be, at that case I'd just be like, dude, don't even roll your dice, just scream a number now.
There's no solution to the crease problem or the corner problem. It will always exist. But to be a good player means that you don't ever ask to re-roll your dice because it landed on a crease. Once you start playing D&D for a while, you know that's a problem. So you just roll the dice and you just take whatever number is the closest to the top.
Exactly. Or, if it lands on a pencil or something, you move the pencil out of the way, and whatever it then lands on is what you get. Or, the DM, as a DM, you come and look at it, and you're like, just re-roll. Most of the time, I'll just say, they're like, if it landed on a crease, I'll just say re-roll. Now, then again, someone could lie, and they actually got a nat 1. And I'm actually going to use that to segue into nat 1s and nat 20s. And how important...
But before we get into that, would you mind if I talked real quick about our social medias and like other things that we would like to bring up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Feel free.
So, yeah, episode 1, so far so good. I just want to mention that we have an Instagram account. If you follow us at Dice Matter, that's at DICE.MATTER. No caps or anything, because it's Instagram. We also have a Twitter. So our Instagram is mostly going to be for little funnies, little sillies, little memes and such. Frankly, whatever we like. And our story for that will also be to let us know, or let y'all know when we're recording, when we put out episodes, all that fun stuff. The Twitter is mostly going to be for announcements, like there's not going to be an episode this week or whatever. And you can follow us on Twitter at Dice Matter. That's at DICEMATTER with the D and M capitalized. And we have an email, so if you'd like to email us at dice.matter@gmail.com. That's dice.matter@gmail.com. No caps or anything. That'd be great. So now that little administrative moment is over, let's talk about natural 1s and natural 20s.
Yeah, so Jacob, what are your...
My thoughts on natural 1s, natural 20s. It's probably my favorite part of D&D. I say that with a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm always saying that, this is my favorite part of D&D. But nat 20s and nat 1s are such a fun aspect of Dungeons & Dragons. Because it either installs a group cheer or a group boo. But either way, it's fun. I mean, I always bring up the best... for those of you who don't know, a D20, if you roll the D20 and it lands on a 20, that is a nat 20, a natural 20. You naturally rolled that number. And the same thing with 1. If you roll a D20 and it lands on 1, that is a nat 1, a natural 1. So I always like to use the example of why D20 nat 1s and nat 1s or nat 1s and nat 20s are so fun to play with. I like to use the example of, say you're going to pickpocket the orc. You get a nat 20. You go into his pockets. You're allowed to grab whatever you want. It's basically like Skyrim. You open up his inventory, you see everything, and you just collect what you want.
Yeah.
But if you get a nat 1, you end up pantsing him, or maybe tickling his back. You end up really disturbing this orc and proving to him, basically having him turn around and see a sign on your forehead that said, "I'm trying to pickpocket you."
Yeah.
And that's why I love them. They add so much to the story element of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
Some of my favorite moments in our games that we have played are the results of natural ones or natural 20s. For example, the the final battle against Tiamat when Dillon was running our Tyranny of Dragons game, my chaotic evil rogue, I didn't realize he was chaotic evil until this happened.
Really dropped the coin.
He really did. That's a whole other story.
That's a story for another time.
Yeah.
We'll bring that up. That's a hell of a thing. But we had a sorcerer who had this magic staff. Was it a staff of the Magi? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a really high level. It wasn't the Staff of Power, but it was some other one.
It was like
Yeah.
the staff of
Yeah,
power.
it was just a very
Some-
powerful.
Some extremely powerful staff that that I knew that I needed to get to, like, I think I had like some spell slots that I could use to cast spells, and Jacob, our wizard, was out of spells, I think. So I was like,
Yeah. Well,
I'm going to
he
get-
couldn't use spells.
Our thoughts
Right,
was
but-
I couldn't use spells unless I got the staff, and then
Yes.
it would help with my character casting spells or something like that. And the player who owned the staff didn't need the staff, so he wasn't
Right,
willing
and-
to give Bram it either, though.
Yeah, he's being a
So-
butt.
like, being the chaotic evil pragmatic guy I was like, okay, I'm going to steal the staff. I rolled a natural 1 on my sleight of hand check. I had an inspiration, which I think it's a variant rule. You don't have to play with inspiration, but I re-rolled, got another natural 1, ended up killing half the party when the staff broke in my hand.
Yeah. For those of you that are wondering, if a staff breaks at all, most of the time it will erupt in such a great power, it will definitely kill you. And
It's designed to be an end-all weapon. If you are backed up in the corner and you know your character can't make it out alive, but you can help other characters, you can pretty much kamikaze by breaking your staff.
and I think another good part about that was then Jacob rolled a nat 20.
Yeah, and that's exactly. Everyone rolled to see if they would die by Bram's faulty nat 1s. And my character rolled a nat 20, so he didn't take any damage from this staff. And that right there, to me, was a big thing because, just to have context for you guys, we were playing Tyranny of the Dragon Queen for about a year and a half. So we got,
Yeah.
it was our first ever campaign that we played as a party. It was the first ever time we really got into Dungeons and Dragons. So a year and a half in, we thought that was pretty good. I know some viewer out there is going to say, well, we're playing a campaign that's 5 years. But to us, it was a big deal, a year and a half.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
And when we got to that final fight with Tiamat and the staff broke and half the party died,
Yeah.
it felt amazing that I rolled a nat 20, so my character, who's been in it from the beginning of the game, can still be in it in the final fight against Tiamat.
Yeah. And I
And-
think. Go ahead, Bram.
Those nat 1s really became the defining moment for who my character was as he was
Yeah.
transported to the abyss and driven insane, and is now a demigod patrolling the universe.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, in our campaign, you're legit the devil. So.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Like, I mean, not you as a person, of course, but
Your
Oh,
character.
no, yeah. I'm a pretty nice guy, I think.
yeah.
Um,
but
I would
But-
like to or go ahead, Dylan.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, no, and I'm gonna bring up like what I said earlier was like, in Mad Mage, what I'm running right now, Jacob's character, I swear to God, the gods wanted him to die. He just kept getting, he got regular ones, he got nat ones, he just couldn't. I swear to, and like I didn't know what to do, so I took his arms, I
took my axe.
I took his throwing axe. His character lived somehow, but then he gets nat 20s when rolling religion, and I throw him back in time with his dwarvish ancestors, and he becomes the Winter Soldier and now has metal arms. So
I think nat 20s and nat 1s make the game more interesting.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a critical succeed and a critical fail because it gives the player something to look forward to.
Mhm.
It
Oh,
gives
yeah.
that feeling of, what if I roll a nat 20?
Yeah, and one thing I will like to say about like nat ones and regular ones and how I kind of like to deal with the critical failure versus a regular one failure. I like to have them be kind of the same thing in the sense of a nat one will do something to your character personally. Like it will affect you. Like Jacob, your arm gets cut off. Baron got his arms cut off. But Jacob also got a regular one. So then he was trying to pray, and so he got sent to the devil lair where he saw his friend get buried alive. That won't do anything to Jacob's character.
Yeah, it's more of a...
Like, this is the shit that
thing.
just kind of happens.
You know, and Bram, I'm sure you would agree with me on this, and you too, Dillon, is nat 1s, not so much nat 20s, but nat 1s provide very good chances to roleplay.
Yes.
And it is probably my favorite part of roleplay is when you get a nat 1. Say you walk into a building, you roll for perception. Perception is looking around. You roll for perception, and you get a nat 1, and your character is somehow just blind. He's gone blind for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's so much fun to play around with and entice the party to make your character blind. So it makes it, yes, it makes it a flaw for the party to deal with, but it makes the party more into it. Now they have to figure out how to solve this character's blindness.
Yeah, or our other character, he's playing a warlock right now, and I think I just have a limb fetish this campaign. I chopped off his legs, or one of his legs, and I like that because one, Jacob then also got another nat 20, and I gave him the solution, but this time I didn't make it so easy. I made it so they actually had to go search for the solution, but they know it's there. And
It might just be a thing with our group of removing limbs between Sam's barbarian getting his leg cut off by, what was it, a white dragon?
no, he had this rivalry between a Balrog or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and his name was crap, what was his name?
Oh, I cannot even remember.
Not Spanky.
No. That's a different story.
Spanky is a tale for another time. In a future episode, for all of you wondering of these amazing tales that we are just putting off to the side, don't be afraid. In a future episode, we will tell you all of the crazy and wonderful tales that have happened to us and occurred to us while playing Dungeons and Dragons.
And
If you want to hear about these wacky tales, go ahead and email us at dicematter@gmail.com or tweet at us or send us a
Follow
DM.
our Instagram, and on our Instagram, I'm sure we'll be able to make a post about that. That is DICE.MATTER.
okay, one more time for me, Jacob. Can we
One more
Dice
time,
Matter?
it's
DICEMATTER.
Now, going from nat 20s and nat
Stop
1s,
bullying me.
going from nat 20s and nat 1s, I want to total segue, spontaneous segue that doesn't really make much sense, but I want to get your
Zoinks.
guys' opinion on this. What does it mean to never have enough dice?
Oh God. Okay, so at this
there's
point, I have a
there's
cigar box
Oh
full
my god.
of dice. So like I said, I first got my first pair. There was that sparkly pair, and I remember specifically, Jacob's brother handed me
Yes.
this cigar box and was like, "Keep them in here," and of course, I put it in there. And then he comes and grabs a 1 pound dice bag and plops it down, and it was like, "Choose whatever you like." So I get more. And then eventually I get another 1 pound and another 1 pound, and I get this die because it looks cool. And if people leave dice on the table, I just put it in that box. So it just kind of comes to this point to where even now I have as many dice. I have so many dice that I shouldn't have to buy anymore, but I do.
You do, yes. I definitely agree. I'm kind of in the same boat as Dillon. I have a metal popcorn bucket at home for Ralph Breaks the Internet 2, best movie out there.
Represent.
And it is.
Was it actually good? Just to
Oh
change
yeah,
the
It was
list?
a very good
the
movie.
best movie of 2018. Like that's not even a meme.
No, like I really enjoyed that movie. But going along with that, I have that metal popcorn bucket. It is a large. It is very big, and it is filled with dice. And I still go out, see a pair of dice that look cool, and purchase them.
And yeah, Bram, I mean, you know firsthand about my dice obsession.
Yeah.
And me stealing all yours. So, how do you, now that you haven't been with the group for a while, how do you view dice and all that?
Let me see. So over the summer, like that summer before I was gonna move, I purchased, like a big 1-pound bag of dice that I still use to this day. I really don't have that huge of an obsession with dice.
Mm-hmm.
There is like, I have it right here in front of me, and it's, it's got like lead markings on it, and it has,
Yeah.
it has my very first set of dice that I bought, and I'm sure it has like some of the dice that you gave me.
Do you still have the orange set that I gifted you at the table?
Oh yeah, it's right here. The D6 of it.
Hell yeah.
But there's that classic thing that's going around of the click clack goblin brain. Have you guys seen that? I don't know.
I don't think I have.
Oh.
Oh. Well, it's this idea of like, oh, I don't need any more dice, but my goblin head is going the click clack funny noise.
They're the
dice monkey in your head.
Oh,
yeah.
They're the
dice
forbidden
monkey.
fruit.
Yeah.
Dice.
Well, and that's a topic I'll probably go into a different episode. Is me. I mean, we're actually recording in our D&D area, and I've spent probably over $2,000 on D&D, and
just dice in general, too, it becomes a part of who you are as a person. Your dice sets represent you. I mean, you.
I know of people who will buy a brand new set of dice just for a character that they're playing. Like,
I do that. I do that a lot. I am very hardcore. Just the other day, I saw this cool pair of dwarf dice. I was like, Dillon, I have to get this for my dwarf character.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not a superstitious person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really believe in a lot of things like witchcraft or, that kind of stuff. But I do believe heavily in luck.
Mm-hmm.
And as a nerd and as a Dungeons and Dragons fanboy, I will always carry a D20 on me wherever I go, because I just believe that it gives me more luck.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's one thing I kind of want to bring up is, do you guys have the same problem to where you'll be walking around the house and you'll just find a random die?
Yes.
Like, it doesn't matter, like D20 to D4,
I recently found a D12 in my shower. In my shower.
Dude, I was outside in my driveway and I found, I guarantee you, a handful of dice just chilling out there. But I come inside my house, I go to my room, in my bucket next to my dresser, there's some D20s. I go into my dining room, there's a D4 laying there on the ground. And it's just it becomes so weird to me that it's such a normal thing just to have them around the house that it's
It is weird. It's like I said, once you start using the dice, they become a part of who you are as a person,
I think the strangest place I've ever found a dice was I woke up one morning and there was one right next to me, on my pillow.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I was doing the night before, but
the dice fairy came.
Up,
yeah.
Oh, hello, people,
Yeah, and I
you
think
fell asleep and the dice fairy came and plopped one on your pillow.
And Jacob, I know you wanted to talk about this a little bit. It's a little bit of transition. Is you do find that D4 on the ground, but say you don't notice it.
Oh God.
And you step right on, and
so one of the players we play with, Maxwell Slater, he is a
Max,
big.
I love you.
Max, shout out to you. I love you.
big shout out.
He is a big advocate on the idea that D4s hurt worse than Legos, and I 1000% agree with him. People who have stepped on Legos and say that Legos are the worst thing to step on do not know the pain of stepping on a D4.
Yeah. A D4, for all you don't know, it's a 4-sided die. And
it's like a triangle.
Yeah, it's like a pyramid.
Yeah.
It's it looks like, and has 3 sides. And there's 2 different types of dice. There's plastic dice, but then there's metal dice.
Oh.
And I have dropped my D4. I'll be DMing down here. and I will drop my D4 without even my metal D4, and I'm not wearing shoes, and I stand up because something crazy happens. You know, frickin' Jacob's character backflips over a dog and then spanks it on its way down. I land, and I get up, putting my feet down as hard as I can, and I step on a metal D4, and instantly, I'm done. Like, I'm out. Like,
You're
Chief,
done,
call
yeah.
me 911. Like, I'm gone.
You fall on the ground. It's those classic vines, the psh, psh, and then the fucking song starts playing. It goes black and white. Oh my! Every vine ever.
And I think one thing, when it comes to dice, is like, I just like how it can bring people together.
Extremely.
You know, in the sense of, dice are probably the most wholesome thing I think in D&D.
They're probably the. I know we said that they're kind of the hardest hurdle to get over, but they're also kind of the easiest thing to introduce you to D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, a person naturally has a gravitation towards the D20. It is a very attractive looking die. It just looks cool. You want to roll it. You see it and you're like, damn, I want to roll that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when you sit at the table and you're presented with all these cool dies, it's cool to roll them. And when you get to roll your first D8 or your first D12 for like a character-based reason, it's so cool.
Oh, it's exciting.
I don't know why, but I have like a distinct memory of rolling my first DA. It's like, you know when do you have those memories of like, just the weirdest memories of you as a toddler or something?
Yeah, like I just pop up and you're like, I don't remember sticking a dinosaur up my ass. Yeah.
I don't know what kind of childhood you had. I don't know where that comes from.
Don't worry about it. It's nothing.
It's a hard place.
Getting my diaper changed one time, but that's enough about me.
But that's enough about.
I do remember my first ever D&D campaign. I remember my first ever character, like you said. I have a very distinct memory. I remember I was very new to D&D. My brothers invited me to go with them to play with their group. I sat down at the table. I was kind of nervous. This was my first ever D&D session. And one of the guys who was there, you know, not related to me, he's helping me make a character. And I don't know if it was out of bad motives or good motives or kind of light teasing motives because they knew I was a new player. But he planted the idea in my mind that it would be a genius idea to have my character be a hobbit whose wife got turned into a cow. So he tried to find the guy who turned his wife into a cow to turn her back into a human. But the reason I feel like it was kind of teasing is because not only did my character have to bring around one cow, then he said, oh, you know what would be even funnier is if one day you confuse the cow with another cow, so your character has to bring around two cows, because potentially one of them is your wife, but you don't know which one.
Yeah.
So my first ever character was this hobbit who lugged around two cows, hoping to find the magician who changed the first cow into changed his wife into the first cow.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna save my first time and first time for everything for like when we talk about that later on.
In a future episode.
That way I can save material and I'm not just being like, oh, if you want to know more, just go back.
I would like to, if you gentlemen don't mind, like to take a second to tell the viewers how we do want to set up our future episodes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, here at Dice Matter, we do have kind of a schedule, roughly on how the episodes will be formatted. We have the Matter series, which welcome to the first episode too. Dice Matter. Next episode, we'll be talking about race matters, why your D&D race matters, and how race variants, and just everything about kind of breaking down the race category in D&D. Mm-hmm. Personally, I'm a huge Tiefling fan, but we'll save that for next episode. And then branching off of that, we do want to start another kind of mini series called Versus. We'll be talking about certain things like digital D&D versus physical D&D. You know, that kind of, we compare two things of D&D, and we go into a whole episode about that. Mm-hmm. This will be our longest episode. Roughly, we're wanting to shoot for about an hour for each episode, including the ending and the beginning. This episode, we're just kind of going around seeing how long it takes, just to get a good feel of what it's like. Moving forward, we would like to have some guest stars on Dice Matter, but to do that, we want you guys to either send us an email at dicematter@gmail.com, or maybe shoot us a dice.matter@gmail.com. Would you like to spell it for us, Bram?
dice.matter.
Again, that's dice.matter@gmail.com.
Or you can send us
dice with an X.
.com.
Or you can send us a DM on our Instagram account, dice.matter, or maybe shoot us a tweet over on Twitter at dicematter.
And that's DICEMATTER at gmail.com.
I also want to give a special thanks to the people who wanted to tune in and listen to this episode on Dice Matter. Obviously, we'll talk more about that when we finish the episode, but if you're still with us and you're still listening right now, thank you so much for sticking along with us.
And I can guarantee you, if you're still listening, I will guarantee you a free kiss on the lips. That's how I'll know.
That is a Dillon free kiss on the lips.
That's how I'll know you'll be listening up until this point. Come into me, look at me in the hallway, or send me a text, something, and just be
you now have one free coupon for a Dillon kiss.
And that's how I'll know.
Spend it wisely. Anyone who rewatches this episode and gets to this point, don't worry, your coupon renews. Yeah. So every time you listen to that little part where he says he's going to promise you a kiss, you get another one.
Don't worry. I think every just one random moment every episode, I'll be like, if you're listening now, this is your kiss coupon.
So that gives you incentive to listen to future episodes. You might get a kiss coupon from Dillon. Yeah. And don't worry, he's very good at redeeming it.
Not only do you get to listen to quality programming about your favorite tabletop role-playing game, you also get a kiss on the lips from the most beautiful man on earth.
And both of those start with a K, by the way. Kiss coupon. Both coupon with a K.
Make sure you say the coupon starts with a K.
KUPON@gmail.com.
/DICEMATTER.
We just want to thank you, viewers, for or listeners, because it's a podcast, for coming in, spending your day with us, and listening to Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing game, your new favorite Dungeons and Dragons podcast, with your favorite goons. Now, going on the coupon thing, I would like to say though, you can only get a French kiss if you get 10 coupons. So do not ask for a French kiss on your first coupon.
True.
He will say no.
I only give kisses on the cheeks right now.
Now, going back to Dice.
You said kiss on the lips.
You're right. I'll give you kiss. I don't care. You can be Steve Buscemi. I'll still give you a kiss on the lips.
I think Steve Buscemi is a great guy. I don't see why that would be a bad. Yeah, I agree with Bram on that one.
Why?
You know what? Let's not get off topic.
Steve Buscemi looks like one of my D&D characters. I thought.
Going back to.
Our first guest on next week's episode is Steve Buscemi.
Do you think God stays in heaven because he fears what he created?
Steve Buscemi, if you're listening right now, this is your opening to email us, tweet us, or DM us to get on the podcast.
Everybody knows Steve Buscemi's he specifically likes dice in D&D.
Moving forward, back onto Dice. Oh, that was really hard to kind of get back there. This is a simple topic, but I just want your opinions on it. We don't have to talk about it for much. Do you like dice bags or dice cases?
Dice bag, 100%.
Dice bag.
I have a dice case, technically, but that's just because convenience.
If you have metal dice case is obviously better, but if you have just regular dice bag.
Yeah, like I said, I have the cigar case.
Yeah.
But, that's because I don't have to go a lot of places when I play D&D. So.
And then moving forward from that topic, I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on that real quick. Let's talk about different style of dice. Now, those who don't know what D20s and D12s and D8s look like, I recommend that right now you take out your phone, you go onto Google, Chrome, or Firefox, or Bing, or whatever you please. You type into the search bar D&D dice, so you can get a general look at what these dice look like.
And that's D&D. D-I-C.
Let's talk about different dice, though. For example, back to Max Slater, great guy. He has this really interesting set of dice that look like potion bottles. I've also seen interesting dice that look like crystals.
I've seen them made of amethyst.
Yeah, some special kind of unique die. Metal dice in their own are pretty unique and special.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like specialty dice and all that, like I own 2 pairs of metal dice, both of them purple because I love the color purple, and you know I like using them the most just because I don't know, they're like my primary die. You know?
I like the heft of a metal die more than a regular die.
It makes it feel more fantasy like, and don't get me wrong, like plastic dice or whatever, they're good. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, some of them can have issues where, like, they have, like, bubbles in them. And metal dice are, like, the only one where you kind of have that guarantee that it's not going to be weighted.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it's specifically made that way. But, you know, and I think that's another thing. Actually, Bram, what are your thoughts before I change the subject?
I'm a mostly plastic player. I tend to go for like solid colors that like. Here's the thing about me. I'm kind of a dumbass. So
I'll be honest.
I'm kind of retarded.
Poor Alex Jones.
Alex
Jones, if you are listening right now, this is your chance to get on the D&D podcast.
Alex Jones, because I know you're retarded. That's DIC. Anyway,
this is our invitation.
Yeah, this is our formal. Can we have
We
Joe
can't,
Rogan?
We can't.
We have Joe Rogan.
We can't say the retarded word. That's bad. I just want to apologize for saying the retarded word.
If anybody here is offended to that, I fully 100% apologize.
Moving forward, we will make sure not to mention Alex Jones
in his retarded brain. Anyway,
but I still invite him to come on to Dice Matter. I think it would be fun to hear about how the dice turn the frogs gay.
Dude, I would like him to just look. Dude, he's one of those people that definitely in the 80s were like, D&D is for demons. These people are summoning gays.
I would still love for him to come onto the podcast. We could introduce him to D&D. Maybe we can help him build his barbarian that truly wants to make the world go back to how it was. Now,
Holy Paladin trying to sell his supplements.
My thoughts on special looking dice.
Hold on. Let me continue with the thought that I had.
Yeah. Sorry.
So, I have to do like solid colors and like really easy to read dice, so that because I know that this is something about myself that I will mistake a 1 for a 7 or a 1 for an 11.
Yeah,
because I'm just that kind of a person.
Yeah.
So like people have dice that are like they have pretty fonts or they have like really nice engraving on them, but I just can't do that. I have to have like
or like
straight
Max,
up.
Max has some pretty cool potion ones. Which I find interesting. I like the idea of dice that don't look like dice that are dice. I mean, they roll just like dice. They have the same numbers that all the D20s and so have, but they don't look like the D20. They don't look like the D8.
I think my number one pet peeve, as someone who likes to DM, is he has this one die. It's one D20 that doesn't have a 20 in the 20. It's just it's literally like some random picture.
Yeah, some companies will do that. They will replace the 20.
And that's not Max's fault. That like I just don't like when companies do that personally, because like I like the other dice. Like they all look cool, but then that 20 is so hard to know when that's actually 20 to everybody else.
I have seen dice that will replace the 20 with yes and replace the 1 with no, which would be funny. Yeah. I mean, you know, he tells you to jump up a wall and you roll a no.
Roll to attack. All right. Yes.
And I think that's also one thing that always seems to pop up. Actually, I own a D30 that I've never used. I want to use it, at least for something. But, you know, I think that's one thing that you'll notice that will come up a lot as a inside joke is you'll hear always, yeah, I roll a natural 50. Or, you know, something that always happens. And I think that's like one of the funniest moments sometimes. It's just like somebody just like, or like somebody will be doing nothing, or nothing's happening, and you're like, dude, roll me D20. and then the dude, you know, he's like, oh, I got a 14. He's like, all right, take 100 fuck you damage. And, you know, it's just like, it's stupid shit like that, like, you know, you could do it anytime. And I think that's just, it's one thing to connect. And, like, one thing I was kind of talking about how dice are so wholesome is, like, they're the only thing I've ever seen that, like, so many people are freely willing to just lend. You know?
Yes.
Like,
Every player that has joined our group, I have, like, a tradition of giving them their first set of dice. Bram, I gave you your first set. Everyone who joins, I make it a part of the tradition that I will give them one of my sets of dice for their first set of die. And it is a very wholesome moment when you give someone a pair of die and they hold it in their hands and you go, yes, this is yours.
yeah.
That there's no feeling that replaces that.
Exactly, yeah.
This is mine?
And they're relatively cheap, too. One thing is, for Matt Mage, I have 2 new players, and I just went out and I bought them both 2 new sets of dice. Now I still have to give it to him because we still have to do the campaign again. But I don't even think Jacob, you knew. But
and going off of that too is this one's kind of a little bit off topic, but this is very important. Anyone who wants to get a good gift for someone who plays D&D, anyone. Whether it be a girlfriend, a mom, a dad, a brother, a sister, anyone, a friend, don't think that you can't get them dice. No matter who you are, if you get a cool set of dice, you will want that set of dice. You can never have enough dice. And that's the main thing about D&D, and that's why dice do matter, and that's why they're so important, is you can get a pair of dice that are straight gold. And if you get a cool one that, like, has just cool swirls on it, you'll use that one too. There is never a time when you have too many dice. So, yes, feel free to get that person, that special someone, a nice pair of dice. Get them some glow-in-the-dark ones. Get them some metal ones. Get them some stone ones. They're making these really cool amethyst ones on certain companies. Those ones are cool too. But be careful, because certain places dice will sell up for $120 for one set of dice.
yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. You can get a cheap plastic one that will look similar, and the person will love you for it.
Yeah, if that person really wants to go out and, like, okay, personally, I want a set of amethyst die. But, like, I don't want anybody to go drop a couple G's.
I would love to get some emerald dye, but obviously that's not, like, a thing, because it wouldn't be practical, because they would chip and such.
Yeah.
But if you ever hear someone say the phrase, if you ever show someone a cool set of dye, you're like, hey, dude, look at this.
Yeah.
And they say the words, well, why would you get that? That's, like, I already have enough dye. They're not a real D&D player. Cut them out of your life. Cut them off the table. Don't let them come back.
Yeah, I think...
Because you know what? Dice matter.
Yeah, dice. Well, that's one thing. That's how you can tell if somebody's into D&D or not, is how quickly they can bring... We have a player that I feel like if I even talk about this person, they're gonna know.
Don't even.
They're gonna even know who it is. Like, because everybody knows who it is at the table, and they're gonna know who they are personally. But they still don't know how to use dice. And sometimes,
oh no.
Sometimes I sit there and I genuinely question this person's intelligence.
You can't say that. This person's going to know you're talking about them. They're going to come up to you, say, Dillon, give me that free kiss coupon, and then let's go out back and handle this conversation.
I hope that they do. I hope that this person comes up to me and just is just like, he Alex Jones himself. I'm sorry, I'm kind of retarded, but...
Enough with Alex Jones.
Sorry, it's just...
We have to cut all of that.
We have to cut all of
I know, it's keeping it all in.
Oh my goodness.
But no, I think...
Here at Dice Matter, don't represent any of this. We just want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any political
We just
views.
want to make a quick PSA, public service announcement. Here at Dice Matter, we do not judge anyone based on, religion, political affiliation, race, anything. If you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, we will open our arms and welcome you warmly. that being
If
said,
you're not a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, maybe we can make you one. And if you don't want to be, this is probably not the right podcast for you.
I thank you for listening this far, but why?
But like
now that
Bram
we've
said,
alienated our-
dice do matter.
Really?
On a very small, like, surface level, on a very big surface level, on all surface levels, you can't play D&D without dice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can, but are you really playing Dungeons and Dragons at that point?
Yeah, dice are
Then
kind
it's
of
just kind of talking at each other, and that's like,
yeah, and just screaming at I think when it comes to dice are the backbone. They are the skeleton. They
They
are
giveth and they taketh.
they are the thing that if the DM in its basic terms is the computer, is that you put the input and it puts out the output. Dice are the zeros and ones.
I would like to ask you boys, this is a little bit off topic, but just thinking, I would love to get your guys' opinions on this. When do you think it's better to give someone disadvantage rather than to give someone a high DC?
Oh, that's true.
Because I feel like those go hand in hand. Disadvantage is disadvantage, but a high DC also kind of does the same thing disadvantage can do.
I think they should not go with each other. I think that it should be
One or the other?
I think you can give both. You can give, like, you can if it's something that's like absolutely impossible, like your character has a hard time doing it and it's a stupid thing, or not even stupid, just something that's super hard, like making a I'm trying to think of something. Making a weapon out of rocks, or making a weapon out of just nothing. You're going to have a high DC. And if you're not proficient in it, or you have limited stuff, I'm going to give you a disadvantage. Or if you are, you get an advantage with the high DC. And I think telling when a player has an advantage or a disadvantage can be hard.
What about you, Bram? What are your thoughts?
I give my players a high DC when it is a difficult task. If it's I don't know. If you're already a really charismatic person and you walk up to the big bad guy and you say, I want to seduce the villain, I'm going to give you a somewhat high DC, because the villain already hates your character, because you're a ne'er-do-well, bard, sex fiend, whatever. We're gonna have to cut that? I don't know. Anyway, but...
That's just the new
I don't
thing
know,
throughout these
let's-
episodes. Bram at random points going, do we have to cut this?
Yeah, because then that makes it my job. That's when.
Bram at random points throughout every episode from now on will just be, are we cutting this part?
All right.
Is this allowed?
Can we take that off book?
But, gosh. I give my players advantage or disadvantage based on precautions that they take first.
Yeah.
Which,
That's smart.
That's kind of a vague way of putting it, but like
Like if
If
they
you're
set up to do something, then it makes
Yeah.
it easier to do that task.
Yeah.
yeah, if your character walks up to someone and says, "I want to stab him with my sword," I will say, "Okay, roll normally." If your character says, "I want to run around his flank and catch him off guard," I will say, "Okay, roll at advantage."
Mhm.
For disadvantage, like if you would,
If you had one arm.
if you had one arm and you were wielding a two-armed weapon, that's disadvantage right there. Because
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
exactly it. That's when disadvantage. For those of you who don't know, disadvantage and advantage mean that you roll 2 dice, and if it's disadvantage, you take the lower one. If it's advantage, you take the higher one. What a DC means is you have to roll a certain number to pass the...
It's
The
difficulty class is what it stands for.
Yes. So say, for example, Bram decided he wants to do a backflip. Dillon might set the DC to 15, and he would roll the d20 and then add the acrobatics score, and whatever number came out, he would use that to determine whether or not it got to 15, like If it did get above 15, then it would determine that he did the backflip. If it got below 15, it's up to the DM's discretion of what really happens there.
And a good way to judge it, it's even the DM screens, on some of them anyway. It kind of goes in increments of 5.
Yes, 5 is really easy of a task. Anyone can basically do it. Think of it like playing Thumb War. 10 is maybe a little bit more moderate. 15 is a little bit difficult, and 20 is pretty impossible. So say, for example, Bram wanted to do a backflip while solving a Rubik's Cube and at the same time cooking a pot of pasta. He might have a DC of 20 to 25.
Yeah.
But say if he just wanted to do a backflip...
If I was the DM for that player, I'd probably give him disadvantage as well.
Say if he just wanted to do a backflip, though, he might just have a DC of 15 or 10.
Yeah, and...
It does matter the character, too.
Exactly. And I think one thing that always tends to happen is, like... when it comes to DCs, I like to set that if you fail just a little bit below it, then, you don't fail too much. Like, say you're walking across the log over a chasm, and you start walking across. Well, say you fail it by 4 or less, you just fall down on the log. But say you fail 5 or less, then I'm going to say you fall into the chasm, or something like that. Now, if you got a nat 1, then you fall into the chasm with no hope of escape.
You, fall down on the log, bonk your head, and you're unconscious, and you fall into the chasm.
Yeah. So,
And there's a running river going down the chasm that, takes you off a waterfall.
And
then there's a dragon at the bottom, and then
and
Alex
the
Jones is there.
Alex, you die and you go up to heaven, and Alex Jones is sitting there and being just like, "You drank the water."
You become a frog. You become gay. It's a hard time.
You became a demon. You didn't take my supplements.
Alex Jones, again, we are inviting you onto the podcast. Please don't let us turn you off.
Take my butt pill. It'll make it so the government can't read your mind.
We would love to talk D&D with you. So please email us. That is DICEMAT.
And that's Alex Jones, ALEX.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, fellas, but I think that's all the time we have.
That is all the time we have. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has been Dice Matter, your new favorite D&D podcast, a podcast about Dungeons and Dragons, the world's greatest role-playing game. Please feel free to join us. And some goofs. Yeah. Please feel free to join us next episode when we talk Race Matters. That episode will be all about the different races in D&D, and kind of just like this episode, whatever we really want to talk about.
And for those of you who listened to 5 minutes of the beginning and then skipped this part right now, I advise you go to the middle, and we have a treat for you in there. And if you find that treat, you'll know what it is.
So again, thank you for joining us and listening. I'm Jacob Van Amburg.
Alex Jones and Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi, I'm sorry.
We're sorry about that.
We do not condone the making fun of retarded people.
So this is I'm Jacob Van Amburg.
I'm Dillon Hutchinson.
I'm Abram Klaassen.
And this has been Dice Matter. Thank you, and join us on our next episode.
Alex Jones Matter.